These are our notes for 6.4 day 1. We're going to be talking about a standard form of an equation of a line and intercepts, the x and the y intercept. So something important to notice about standard form is that the a, b, and c are all just numbers. So what I want you to notice is that your x term is first, your y term is second, and then on the other side of the equal sign, we just have a number. So an example could be something like this: 5x plus 3y equals 10. That is an example of a standard form equation. We have the x term first, then the y term, and then on the other side of the equal sign, we have the number. Now, what we're really going to focus on today is intercepts. You already know what a y-intercept is, and it's where the line crosses the y-axis. So an x-intercept is very similar. It's just where it crosses the x-axis. So for these first two examples, we are going to look at the graph and figure out where our line crosses the x-axis and the y-axis. So here's our x-axis in yellow. And you want to look, where does your line cross that axis? So I have it highlighted in purple. So this point, we just want to count. So from the origin, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blocks. Whenever we have our coordinate points, the x term is always first and the y term is second. So for the x-intercept, we have to go over 6 and up 0. Now for the y-axis, so now I have the y-axis highlighted in yellow, we have to figure out where does our line cross the y-axis, and I have it highlighted with a purple dot. So here we had to go down 2 from the origin. Since we're going down, this is going to be a -2. Now remember, x goes first, y goes second. We didn't go right or left at all. So we didn't go anywhere right or left, and then we went down 2. For number 2, the x-intercept, we want to find where it crosses the x-axis, and it looks like we had to go over to the left 3. So that means it's a -3. So the x value goes first, we went left 3, and then we went up or down 0. So remember, your first number always tells you if you go right to left. Your second number tells you if you go up or down. So now for the y-axis, it looks like we cross all the way up here, which is up 8. So we went right or left 0, and then we went up 8. There's your x and y intercepts. For the next two examples, we're going to be working backwards. So you are given an equation of a line in standard form, and the directions say to find the x and y intercepts. Whenever the directions say find the x and y intercepts, I like to use something that I call the cover-up trick. So what I want you to do is cover up one of your terms. So I'm going to cover up the 2x first. And what we're left with is 6y equals 12. Now you just have to solve for y. So we divide both sides by 6, and y equals 2. And then I want you to put it in a point form, in the coordinate point. So y goes in the second spot, which means we have 0 in our x spot. Now I'm going to go back to the problem, and I'm going to cover up the 6y this time. And what we're left with is 2x equals 12. Solve for x. Divide both sides by 2. X equals 6. This is the x, so 6 goes first, 0 goes second. Now we are told to plot these points on the graph. So I'm going to do this first one, which means I don't go right or left at all, and I go up 2, and I make a dot. Now I'm going to plot the second one, which is 6, 0, which means I go to the right 6 and then up or down, 0. Now we can connect these two, and there's our line. So example 2, remember this is going to be the cover-up trick. So I'm going to cover up the x's, and what I'm left with is 4y equals 8. Solve for y. Divide both sides by 4. Y equals 2. Put this in a point. X always goes first, y goes second. So the 2 goes in the second spot, 0 goes in the first. Now I go back to the problem and I'm going to cover up the y's this time. What I'm left with is negative x equals 8. So there's really a negative 1 in front of the x. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 1. X equals negative 8. X goes in the first spot, which means we have 0 in the second spot. So now I'm going to plot my points. I'm going to do 0, 2 first, which means I don't go right or left at all, and I go up 2. Then I'm going to plot the second point, so that means I go left, negative 8, and I don't go up at all. Connect those two dots, put your arrows on the end, and there's your line. I'm going to skip to example number 4. So the first thing we want to do is cover up the x's. And be careful, you are left with negative 3 over 4y equals 6. Now, to do this, we want to divide both sides by negative 3/4. Make sure you are using parentheses. And we should get negative 8. Y goes in the second spot, so 0 goes in the first spot. Then I go back and I cover up the y's, and we're left with 1/2 x equals 6. So now we're going to divide both sides by 1/2, but make sure you use parentheses, and x will be 12. X goes in the first spot, so 12 goes in the first spot, 0 goes in the second spot. I'm going to plot my first point, which is 0, negative 8, which means I don't go anywhere right or left, but then I go down 8. And then my second point is 12, 0. It looks like I'm going to go off the graph a little bit. That's okay. And then we connect the dots, draw our arrows, and there's our line. The last one we're going to do today is number 6. So number 6 looks a little bit differently because there's no y term. So I don't have to cover anything up because I only have that x term. So the first thing we're going to do is just solve for x. And x equals 4, which means 4 goes in the first spot and 0 goes in the second spot. There's no y term at all. So that means there's no y-intercept. So the only point that I have to plot is 4, 0. So I'm going to go over 4, up 0, and make a point. And you might recognize that this equation is x equals 4. And that means our line has to go through the x-axis at 4. So it's going to be a straight up and down line. And this makes sense because, look, it's not crossing the y-intercept at all. And that's what we said. We said there's no y-intercept. So it should not cross the y-axis if there's no y in the equation.